The woman against the greed of MPs, Lynn Mengich. This is the chairperson of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission on July the 28th. Actually, that Gazette notice was published on the 27th. Abolished the 5,000 shilling plenary sitting allowance. The House has at least 4 sittings a week, as well as limiting the engine size MPs fuel guzzlers, the engine size of MPs fuel guzzlers, and lowering the mileage claim rate. This is part of what is in contention. 710,000 shilling is 10,000 shillings is what the MP, and that is not a person who occupies the positions of Speaker or Deputy Speaker, gets, and is not the majority or minority leader. But the basic pay is 710,000 shillings. Included in the 710,000 shillings is 150,000 for the average MP for housing, though the Speaker and Deputy Speaker do receive 250,000 shillings. Actually, it's graduated depending on leadership positions, and MPs are shamelessly at it again. The Daily Nation states, even before the new parliament settles down for business, the lawmakers have resorted to the hostage taking they have previously exploited to arm twist the Salaries and Remuneration Commission to yield to their higher pay demands. Their demands came a day after the CBK governor disclosed to them runaway debt was gobbling up nearly half of revenues collected. We have a debt of about 8.45 trillion, according to the Controller of Budget in her 2021-2022 report on the financial year. And this, you'll find more details on page 7 of the Daily Nation. Given we are engaging creatives this morning, there's a photographer who's been profiled in the Daily Nation this morning, and Emmanuel Jambo. Ruto and Kenyatta like this man's job. Renowned South Sudanese photographer Emmanuel Jambo has done the president's official portraits, and we tell you why he keeps landing the presidential gig. That is on page 3. A bit of good news here on page 2, and it is always welcome. Blessing and favor, conjoined twins who beat odds to survive. I recall this surgery. I remember covering it. And here's a quote from their mother. "I wasn't shocked and scared. At first, I wondered if they were indeed my children. I eventually accepted them, but it was heard." But here is a picture of them, all smiles. Definitely a heartwarming story there in the Daily Nation. Speaking of Emmanuel Jambo, there he is. Interesting pose there. Emmanuel Jambo, the South Sudanese photographer who shot the official portraits of Presidents Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto. And you can read that report by Sylvania Ambani on page 3 of the Daily Nation. And Vida takes country by storm in new wave of vernacular music. This again by Sylvania Ambani. Many of us have by now interacted with Vida, whether through participating in the viral TikTok challenge or shaking our heads as we watch the video. All right, so a lot of interesting content there apart from the politics. And speaking of politics, on this page of the Daily Nation, being page 4 of the Daily Nation, why it is a tough call for Ruto to appoint cabinet. Head of state had initially planned to name his cabinet last Sunday before leaving for the United Kingdom. And President Ruto is expected to name his cabinet any time after returning from the United States. You can look at this report by Onyango Konyango in the Daily Nation. I see a quote here by the PSC chairperson Anthony Mushiri. The president has proposed to establish the office of CAS, which will be under the direction of cabinet secretaries. Yes, they have invited public participation and have proposed competitive recruitment for the position of CAS. And staying with politics, Junet writes to Speaker on Azimio lineup. ODM has called a crisis meeting next week to quell the disquiet that has arisen after the names were revealed at a glance. Azimio's proposed leadership in the letter to the Speaker of the National Assembly. Junet has listed, that Speaker being Moses Wetangula, Junet has listed the following as the coalition's nominees for Majority Leader Opiyo Wandayi, Deputy Majority Leader Robert Mbui, Majority Whip Janet Mohammed and Junet, I beg your pardon, Junet Mohammed, the gentleman in question who wrote the letter, and Deputy Majority Whip Sabina Chega. I think I will need to zoom in to better read it. And some members of the coalition are unhappy with the lineup, and ODM has called a meeting to discuss it. So this disquiet within ODM captured in this report by Sam Owino. I think we can minimize our page here. The gentleman Junet is there at the center of this disquiet within Azimio. Taking a look at what else is in the Daily Nation, Yatani, and this is that report that was filed by Sydney Chizima. Yatani rejects claims that Treasury is broke. CS says allegations made by members of the new administration were misinformed. 94 million amount Kenya Kwanza leaders said they found at the Treasury to explain why they could not immediately deliver on their campaign promises. And we go through, and here is the top story on the front page of the Daily Nation. MPs harass, threaten SRC boss for 6 hours over pay. Lawmakers are particularly irked by the agency's decision to abolish the 5,000 plenary sitting allowance. And if I recall, John Mbadi asked them allowance in our Sumbwani, kama hewa Sumbui, why did you have to remove it? But the nation stands to save R1 billion annually should it remain abolished as things stand now. You can read this report here. Look and see perhaps what your MP had to say on the subject. The revelations contained herein, I assure you, are worth purchasing the Daily Nation this morning. And I think we'll leave it at that for the Daily Nation and take a look at what is on the cover of the other dailies. And speaking of the economy and the state of the economy, counties in 153 billion shilling debt hole. This according to the controller of budget. We interrogated in some length yesterday that report. Again, you can find it. Search for Tumbocracy on the NTV Kenya YouTube channel. And I just flipped through and opened the Star for a moment there, and I came across this report that blow to MPs. Sorry, this is the Star. Blow to MPs as Treasury freezes release of CDF. Yatani says there will be no allocation in this financial year. And a quote here, according to Yatani, attributed to Yatani, we have the court order declaring CDF as unconstitutional, and we shall not release any funds as we await directions and advice from the Attorney General. The Standard calls it a double blow for the MPs. On their front page, they say double blow to MPs over CDF allowances. And the front page, oh, I do beg your pardon. The front page there reads, mysterious release of convicted terrorists. In the midst of transition politics, 2 convicted Iranian terrorists were secretly released to Tehran. And you can find more on that in the Standard. I can see here farmers skeptical as cheap fertilizer lands. Mixed reactions, great provision of cheap fertilizer by the government, with some farmers saying it was coming way after planting season. So that contained in the Standard. I see the top here, Aror Kimorer case now runs into headwinds. Cooking gas use plummets. Ebola cases in Uganda hit 7. And they go on with more reports there on the front page of the Standard. But now we'll take a look at the front page of Taifa Leo and the Business Daily. And the Business Daily's headline is this. Let me just zoom in so we can all get a clearer picture. Nigerians sue over 1.4 billion shillings. Over 1.4 billion shillings frozen in Safaricom Bank and Safaricom and banks. 2,468 Lagos investors say they were swindled. Kenya has frozen Flutterwave's 6.6 billion shillings for laundering. That report captured by Sam Kiplagat. And Saudi remittances doubled to 22 billion shillings amid May's abuse. So that is